I wanted to be at Texas State. I chose to be at Texas State. I'm from Texas. That was important to me. I always knew if the right guy got this job, you better watch out.
You better watch out. This is Win Now or Get Bent, episode 165. If you don't already know, I'm Kev Tardello, coming to you on Thursday, September 5th, and we've got a big one on Saturday. The Texas State Bobcats are hosting the UTSA Roadrunners at UFCU Stadium, 3 p.m. this Saturday. The time of this recording, they're about 1,000 tickets away from a sellout, so it's going to be a big crowd. We'll be there, no doubt about it. I know a lot of you sickos out there listening are either on your way there or you're going to be there. We're looking forward to seeing a lot of you out there. If you haven't gotten tickets, it's a pretty hot ticket. We're going to have a little giveaway, a little contest. I'll tell you about it so some of you can enter it and get in on the action there. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about a little preview for the game, Texas State versus UTSA. A little bit of series history of this I-35 showdown, I-35 rivalry, whatever they're calling it. And then the meat of this episode is a great interview with Greg Luca. He's a reporter from the San Antonio Express News. He covers UTSA, Incarnate Word, a little bit of Texas State. He covers it all. So he has a real unique perspective on this whole series. So it was great to really talk with him. He even covered that 2022 season where G.J. Kinney was the coach at Incarnate Word. So he's known G.J. Kinney for a long time. So it was great to talk with him. Before we get to that, though, this episode is brought to you by First Lockhart National Bank. As the largest financial institution headquartered in Caldwell County, First Lockhart National Bank expanded to San Marcos in 2018 and opened a state-of-the-art branch on Hunter Road in 2020. For the past 6 years, FLNB has provided a wide range of financial services that have significantly improved the quality of life for the San Marcos community and beyond. Whether you need personal or business checking accounts, business loans, or home mortgages, they've got you covered. Plus, they offer innovative services like video banking, business banking, and a top-of-the-line mobile banking app. FLNB is also a huge supporter of Tech State football, standing out as one of the largest initial investors in NIL deals for Bobcats players. Be sure to follow them on Twitter, X, @FirstLockhart, and on Instagram, @FirstLockhart. Shout out to Gil Hodges, Senior Vice President at FLNB in MLS number 2475765, a proud Tech State grad and a diehard fan. We're thrilled to be partnering with Gil and FLNB all season long. You can find them at 2507 Hunter Road. That's 2507 Hunter Road, or give them a call at 512-504-7422. Again, that's 512-504-7422. First Lockhart National Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions may vary. Hey, Bobcat Nation. Looking for your next real estate move? McNabb & Company Real Estate Services has been proudly Bobcat owned and operated for over 15 years. They are your go-to team for buying, selling, investing, and managing properties and everything in between. Whether you're a fan or an alum, they've got you covered with the local expertise and full service support you need. Call them today at 512-667-9129. That's 512-667-9129, or visit them at mcnabbandco.com. That's MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. McNabb & Company, where Bobcats find their home. Give them a follow on Instagram, Facebook, and X at McNabb & Co. Shout out to Monica over at McNabb. She's one of the biggest Bobcat supporters, a day one Bobcat, and now she's supporting us, partnering with us for this season. Cannot thank Monica enough. Check them out again. That's mcnabbandco.com, MCNABB, mcnabbandco.com. We are also brought to you by TGC LLC, the GalindoCollective.com. That's GALINDO, GalindoCollective.com. A team of professional consultants dedicated to helping others realize their business potential through people, planning, and practice. Their services cover a wide range of areas such as business strategy, marketing, human resources, and financial planning. If you own property or a business and want to maximize its profitability, contact TGC at thegalindocollective.com and follow their social media platforms on Twitter at TGC_LLC and on Instagram and Facebook at the Galindo Collective. Shout out to my guy, Rick Galindo, a true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad, He's been with us since last season, all throughout this season, and he's even helping us help you out by giving away these tickets. Thank you so much to TGC for supporting the pod and for allowing us to do this ticket giveaway. Very exciting stuff for y'all. Check them out at thegalindocollective.com. That's GALINDO, thegalindocollective.com. One more for our guys at Chilsey, CHILLZEY.com. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. You can see me holding up a custom Win Now or Get Bent tumbler that was brought to us by Chilsey. If you order 6 or more of these tumblers with any logo you want on there and you punch in Bobcats at your checkout, you will get them for $15 a piece, which is a great deal for these tumblers. They also have, bam, custom koozies. You can see me holding up a Win Now or Get Bent koozie on our YouTube channel. They have any of these custom koozies you want. We'll be handing out these Win Now or Get Bent ones this season, hopefully at this UTSA game. I'll be shouting it out. Look out on Twitter for that announcement. But thank you so much to Dennis Redding, a true Tech State sicko, a Tech State grad. He's been with us since last season, helping us give away some of these koozies, and we are back doing it again this year. So check them out. Chilsey.com, CHILLZEY.com. All right, real quick on our ticket giveaway, we are giving away 2 club seats, C7, row 1, real good seats. We also have 2 Goins Family Pavilion passes and a parking pass that we are giving away to one lucky listener. 2, technically, not, hopefully both of the people that are using the tickets are listeners. If not, whoever wins the tickets needs to put them on and make sure they subscribe and everything. But we're giving these bad boys away. I have it on Twitter where I have people screenshotting a picture of them subscribing to the pod on the YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe there if you're not. But if you're listening to this, you're eligible. You're entered. All you have to do is send an email to WNOGBKEF. That's WNOGBKEFF at gmail.com. Just send your name. Say you want to be in the ticket contest. We're going to be throwing all the names into a random name generator tomorrow at noon. That is September 6th, noon Central Time. We'll be drawing a name and we will announce the winner and contact the winner and make sure that the winner has those tickets, maybe even some consolation prizes, some koozies maybe for some people who came up just short. Anybody who enters that contest, I want to get y'all a little something. But thanks again to TGC for making that possible, giving these tickets to y'all. I know it's a hot seat. These are some really good ones though. So enter that contest if you want to go. All right, let's get to these Bobcats. I'm not going to spend too much time right here. I've talked a lot about it this week. I've mentioned Greg Luca at the end of this, good about 30 minutes long. We talk about this whole deal. I even hopped on the Alamo Audible podcast. I don't know when they're going to put that one out, but we talked about this series for a good while. That was good to kind of step in the bird's beak a little bit and get to talk about this series. But it's a big one. It's a big one. It's hate week for Texas State. It's hot on the Twitter streets right now. People are battling. I've been, I've been around this block quite a few times. So for the most part, I'm more observing and lurking a lot of it, but it's good. It's a good time. It's nice to see everyone getting out there, getting frosty for this game. I think all of you, I'm sure, feel the same way. All the talk, all the hate week stuff, it doesn't matter. Saturday is what matters. And on the field, 3 p.m., these 2 teams just meeting. And it's been, obviously, it's a one-sided series. UTSA is up 5-0 in the series since 2012. There's been some close ones. 2020 was the closest one. Gosh, overtime loss, missed field goal. That was a brutal missed extra point, if I'm remembering. I'm trying to forget that one. There was the 2017 one where they just ran away with it. That was a loss for a bad loss for the Bobcats in that one. So it's been a tough go for the Bobcats. And last year, obviously, the 1-point loss, 20-13. It hasn't been a total blowout, especially the last 3 times, because even that 2018 game was 25-21. So they keep getting close. Bobcats keep getting close, but not quite getting there. I feel like this series this year in 2024, it is these 2 teams as evenly matched as they've ever been going into this game. There is just a I mean, even if you look back at their season opening games, the similarities in those two games and how they both were somewhat playing with their food with lesser opponents, where they jumped out to this lead. They had some sloppy play with some penalties and some turnovers on offense, and then let the other team get back into it before finishing them off in the fourth quarter. Both sides did that, and so it's going to be a really really good game. I think obviously as far as the overall series and the ramifications of what it means, it's this game means more for Texas State. Plain and simple, it just means more for Texas State than it does for UTSA. Obviously, they have quite a big lead on this series. They don't want to lose this game, of course not. They don't want to lose to a hated rival. But it's if they were to lose, I don't think it would the indications for the program wouldn't be as great because they have already what they have done in the last few years and what they've done in this series particularly. It's a big game for Texas State. This is a big one that they need to get this monkey off their back. I mean, it's been 12 years of it hanging over this program that they can't get over this regional rival that's just right down the street. And and to be 0-5 against a regional rival, against a program that is like what is it, 54 miles away from each other. It's the same level, the same FBS level, the same group of five level that they're playing on, over the last 12 years, aside from the last couple years for the Bob, I say couple, really just last year and then into this year, it's been a tale of two cities, a tale of two programs where one side has done what you're supposed to and the other has not. And Bobcats it's been in a way it helped that the built-in excuses of like, oh, it can't be done here because of the level Texas State is at, and just the support just isn't around when you have a program right down the street that is the same level and they are exceeding the expectations and they're taking full advantage of the potential that they have being in this area. And so in a way it has led to Texas State focusing on elevating itself. Obviously, it's not all just on UTSA, but that's one of multiple reasons when you look right down the street at UTSA trying to keep up with that has been a big thing on Texas State's mind, but being able to beat them hasn't happened. They haven't been able to do that. And so it's just from that perspective, just the program needs this win a lot more than I feel like UTSA does. And I think that's got to motivate this team a little bit, especially being at home with such a big crowd we were just talking about. It's very, very important. And I mean, last year when talking with some of these new players, even TJ Finley, asking him after the Baylor game, what do you think about UTSA and this whole rivalry coming up next week? And he's like, I didn't even know it was a rivalry. This time it's a different deal. They all know about it. They all are very well aware. Even Jordan McLeod, even he's brand new, but he's well aware of it. It's a different situation. And I mean, even just the ramifications, we've talked about this to death with GJ Kinney and Jeff Traylor being the relationship that they have. Jeff Traylor was his high school coach his senior year at Gilmer. And now 20 years later, here they are meeting up as coaches at the FBS level. I mean, it was last year was the first time for it, and even it's great that it's even back this year because there's no telling if it will be back in years going forward. Who knows what's going to happen at the end of this year? But for right now, it's such a great series, and you have to imagine for GJ Kinney, this is kind of like the big boss in a video game that he needs to get over. It's this guy who knows so much about him at a rival school. Obviously, they care very much about each other, but he wants to beat him. He wants to beat his old ball coach, and so far the old ball coach has had it over on him. One go at it. This is the second go. We'll get to see what he gets to do. I think Texas State's going to take it though. I've said it going since fall camp. I've been confident about this game for the Bobcats. I know I was pretty harsh on the Lamar game, talking about the penalties, talking about the sloppy play, and I think that was really just them playing down to an opponent, their opponent. It wasn't my full belief on this team and what they can do, or on GJ Kinney and the type of coach that he is. GJ Kinney, he's a terrific coach. He's my favorite coach that has been here. It's not perfect. There's some things you got to do, but no coach is perfect. But that's kind of the thing, is they always are trying to get to perfection. And he's getting close. He'll never be able to obtain it. That's kind of the great thing about chasing perfection. It's this goal that just keeps going and going and going, and you stay more motivated for it every day. But I very much I believe in GJ Kinney, believe in the direction that he has this team, this program. I believe he's built up the firepower to take on this UTSA team. I think one of the biggest factors is Jeff Traylor's experience, not just coaching UTSA, but coaching in general. He's been around the block quite a bit, and he's going to know how to prepare for this game. But I think the extenuating circumstances for me, looking at this game, why I think Texas State will win it, is really the factors behind center for these two teams. I think Jordan McLeod has a ton more experience than Owen McCown. He's got a lot of experience. I mean, this is year 6 for him. Is it 6 or 7? I think he may have been. It's got to be 6. I don't think it's 7. But Jordan McLeod has been around. He's played a lot of ball. He's been around. He's the reigning Sun Belt Player of the Year. It's going to be a big crowd, and I don't think that's going to bother him because he's been in these situations before. McCowan, he's a terrific quarterback. Looks sharp in that game against Kennesaw State. He's more of a pocket presence than Frank Harris. Frank Harris, his magic was his improv, moving around outside of the pocket, making things happen. Seems like McCowan is I wouldn't necessarily call him a statue, but he's going to stay in that pocket for the most part. And he's a pretty sharp quarterback, but him staying in the pocket, I feel like, is going to be that detriment, that lack of mobility, because we know the Texas State defensive line they're going to be coming after him. And this is a sophomore quarterback on the road with a big crowd in a rivalry game. Believe it's his second start. If it's not, it's a handful of starts. I know he got in there some last year. I can't remember if he started or not any of those games, but he's going to be, it's at least his first road start, and, being handed the keys, for this season going into this game. That's going to be a big moment. It's going to be a big moment for him. He's a sophomore. He's got terrific pedigree. His dad was in the NFL. I think he's a really good quarterback. I know they had some issues with the offensive line as well, possibly some injury issues. When we talked to Greg Luca was talking about they were having some communication issues with that offensive line. And I know this Texas State defensive line is licking their chops here and there, thinking about that they have some issues there, and they have a quarterback who likes to hang out in the pocket, because that's where they like to hang out too. They like to hang out in the pocket. And so they're gonna pin their ears back. And I think that's going to be the difference. If they can stop this UTSA offense before it even gets going, before it is allowed any momentum by stopping it before the line of scrimmage, that's going to pay huge dividends, because their defense is going to be tough. UTSA's defense, specifically when Jeff Traylor is there, but even before Jeff Traylor, their defenses have always been stout. They've had strong defenses, and it's going to be that again this game. I don't think the Bobcats are going to be able to put up all the points that they want, but they're going to be able to score. They'll get through there. They have the talent. They have Ishmati. They have Joey Hobart. They have Jordan McLeod. They have Jaden Williams, who I think is terrific. Cole Wilson, excuse me, not Williams. Cole Wilson. They have terrific athletes. They have a really good offensive line. We talked about the snapping. Maybe they were able to fix some of that, get that corrected first game. That's why it's nothing like a huge red flag for me with all of that. So I feel like they're going to be able to get through. And if this defense can do what they need to do, this offense won't need to put up a ton of points. And I feel like they're going to be able to get after that quarterback. I think it might be another low scoring affair just for all of the build up to this game. Not super low scoring, maybe something like we saw last season. But it could even, like I was saying, they're pretty evenly matched though. Even though I'm saying what I'm saying about McCowan, I think this defensive line is going to get after him. If they don't get after him, he's going to sling it. And he's going to be able to get it to the receivers, because he can throw that ball. So that's going to be a huge part of it, is the pressure of these Bobcats. to be able to get in there. And lack of penalties. You got to watch out for the penalties, of course. They're gonna pin their ears back and want to get after the quarterback. We saw them jump off sides. We saw some roughing the passer. Just got to play smart because those penalties are just going to give the Roadrunners the field. I kind of for the most part, I went through it, but why I think Texas State wins home crowd. I think the home crowd's going to be on their side. That factored in last year. That was a really terrific game for There was a huge crowd. I even said it last year. I feel like I made some Roadrunners mad when I said it was a neutral site because there's fans from both sides. And who knows, maybe I'll make some Bobcats mad with this, but it's going to be the same situation. There's going to be a lot of Roadrunners at this game. I mean, it's a regional rival. They don't have to go far. It's not an indictment on either program when that happens. If anything, it's a great thing about how awesome this series is that it does this for these two programs where they can get these huge crowds that are possibly the two biggest crowds either one will see all season. So I think that's going to be a factor, but that's going to favor the Bobcats. I think I like McLeod over McCowan. I think that's going to be a huge factor behind center. Just a more experienced quarterback, a better quarterback, in my opinion, with Jordan McLeod. I think Texas State's defensive line is better than UTSA's offensive line. I think Texas State's defensive line is better than a lot of teams' offensive line, and I think that's going to pay dividends this game. And I think the skill positions for Texas State are better than UTSA's skill positions. They have some good players. Willie McCoy. They're still trying to figure out their running back situation. I just assuming it's going to be Barnes, but it seems like he got benched after he had a fumble. Kavarian Barnes, who I'm talking about there. But they usually have a really good run game, so it'll be interesting to see if they can get some of those transfers going for UTSA. But I think overall, Texas State has the better skill positions between Ishmati, Joey Hobart. We listed him already. Cole Wilson, Jaden Williams, the new guy on the block. He's real good. Number 0. Big game for him coming up, maybe. What would lose the game for Texas State? Number 1, penalties. We all know that. We talked about that one last game. That was a big one, the 16 penalties. Saving grace there is UTSA had a problem with penalties as well. Hopefully it doesn't become a ref show and everybody can have a nice, good, clean, physical game. Turnovers on both sides of the ball. They need to do a better job of getting turnovers, taking those opportunities of getting that ball back and not turning it over as much. Usually they're a little better at that than they were last week. It was kind of a funky game, but we'll see. And if they can't get that pressure on the quarterback, then that's gonna be big. If they are having to rely fully on the DBs, it's going to be a long day. But I think the factors that I talked about them why they would win, I think that's gonna outweigh any of these negatives I had. But let's keep it quick because I want to get to Greg Luca. We talk about if I keep talking, I'm gonna step on what he and I go over. So we're gonna go to him. We'll do our little outro right now though. Patreon.com/win now or get bent. Check it out. Our great intern, we activated him. He just had a great post about this game. So go check that one out. WNOGB.com. You can check out our merch. It's a bit of a chilly day. So I got the Sicko sweater on. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, Win Now or Get Bent on YouTube, like and subscribe. You can check out all our great merch. Check us out on Twitter at Win Now or Get Bent, on Instagram at WNOGB. Like, subscribe, comment, all that great stuff you got for us. Thank you to TGC. Thank you to McNabb. Thank you to First Lockhart National Bank. And thank you to Chilsey. Thank you to our great producer, Zachary Webb, the Wizard. And of course, you sickos. Big one on Saturday. Hope to see y'all out there. All right, let's do it. Win now or get bent. My guest for this episode is the great reporter with the San Antonio Express News. He covers Incarnate Word Cardinals and the UTSA Roadrunners. It's Greg Luca. Greg, you probably cover a lot more than that, so you can fill in a little more in the blanks there. But glad to have you.
Yeah, what's been awesome is that as UTSA's profile has risen and even Incarnate Word's profile has risen, I've been able to focus a lot on those too. You might get me at some of the other smaller colleges if something pops up, or I'll write a Texas State story here and there, but thankfully we've got you to help us with that part of it. So yeah, we get to be pretty focused on college, especially this time of year. And I'm glad to be on. It's good to get to be a part of the show.
Yeah. I'm real thankful that the Express News is letting me get some of those Bobcat clips in there. It's gonna be a pretty fun season. Should be an interesting one. It starts this week. This is going to be, what is this? Your fourth edition of the UTSA Texas State rivalry. Is that right? Your fourth one?
Yeah, I came in 2018. So there was the 2020 game, and then there was last year, and I think there was a couple years they missed in there, right? So I don't
Yeah.
know. It's been as many as it would have seemed with the way the schedules worked out, but enough
Yeah.
to get the taste of the rivalry and know that it means a lot for a lot of the people.
Yeah, I thought for sure you were at the 2018 one, that 25-21 game. I didn't know why. I thought you were all the way
You know,
back there, but
I
that
started in October 2018, so I think I would have
uh,
just missed that one.
yeah, okay. That
All
makes
right,
sense.
same season at least.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense because I remember that was the last year of Withers and all that fallout,
Yeah,
and I could remember you being there at the Express News then.
right.
That when all that was happening makes sense if you got there in October. Well, you missed out on that one of the closer ones, that 25-21 one. I have
I don't feel like
I've
I missed out
experienced.
a lot from those eras. I mean, I think I came in at a good time the way both programs have gone since then.
You really have. You know what's funny is it seemed like UTSA was on a different trajectory, and then that went south, and then Trailer came in and totally revamped everything the last 5 years. Now it seems like it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah, you came in at the good time, honestly, for both beats. Now at this time for the Bobcats.
Yeah, it's
Um,
crazy to see what Kenny did at Incarnate Word too before this to kind of follow his little path there as well. So it's probably not too surprising from the people who are following what happened at Incarnate Word to see the success that he's had at Texas State, although maybe not as quickly as it all turned out to happen.
yeah, oh yeah, that Incarnate Word team, that 2022 team. Talk about that a little bit, covering Kenny and that whole squad. Obviously, they got to, I believe, the semifinals of the FCS that year. He burst onto the scene, first year as a head coach. What was that like being around that team?
Yeah, it started a couple years before that with the Eric Morris teams now at North Texas and Cam Ward, who just took care of my Gators now that he's down at Miami. So to see the kind of talent that they brought in there and the way that system changed the way that program is talked about. And then you weren't really sure when Kenny came in. Is he going to do all the same things that they did, or is he going to have his own spin on it? And it was just a little bit of an extra tweak and an extra ratcheting of things up. And he clearly meshed with the staff since a lot of the same guys are now there at Texas State. And you saw with Lindsey Scott, just the kind of numbers they put up, it was just insane. I mean, obviously they play at the same time as UTSA, and UTSA has a lot bigger following. So a lot of weeks I'm not seeing them live as much as catching the box scores, and it's just unbelievable to look at the numbers and see the kind of totals they're putting up. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it's crazy to see how well it's translated.
Yeah, the Cam Ward. It was that a little bittersweet for you because you are a Florida grad, like you just mentioned, but you saw the beginning. Him at Incarnate Word, kind of out of Columbia at a school where he wasn't throwing a whole lot in high school. Goes to Incarnate Word, beats Texas State. That was one of the big things they did that year.
Oh,
Now
sure,
it
yeah.
now he goes on to Miami. It's still got to be really cool to see Cam Ward, even though he beat your Gators. I'm sure, huh?
Yeah, it was interesting doing the reporting around that and seeing that in high school that he was part of an offense that like primarily ran the ball and just didn't have that much quarterback experience. But you could just see he plays. It's both really reckless but also really laid back. Like it's such a contradiction his play style, but he's able and willing to make throws that a lot of people can't make. And so he's just incredibly fun to watch. Yeah, I will tune in or catch the highlights whenever I can, even if it's at my guy's expense.
Yeah, he definitely stuck in my memory. That's why I know his whole backstory. I was like, who is this guy that just beat
Right,
the
right.
Bobcats on Incarnate Word? So I have followed him. So hats off to Cam Ward. You mentioned, you being around GJ Kenny's first year as a head coach. You've kind of had your the first collegiate go as a head coach for both of these guys, even Jeff Traylor when he came in. There's so much talk about the similarities of the two guys. What are those similarities and what are the differences that you've seen just from covering their first year in college football?
It's funny because Trailer talked about this some this week, but he's probably, if he had started coaching college 20 years ago, his team would probably look a lot like what GJ Kenny's teams look like. I think that offense that Texas State runs has a lot similar to what they did at Gilmer, where Traylor's kind of evolved and brought in some different ideas as he's been at different stops. And Kenny's just obviously he's still been tweaking what he's been doing, but it's a similar kind of system to what they ran back in those days. And I think the biggest thing for both of them, and it's probably sounds kind of cliche, but it's just the way that they connect with people. They form bonds with their players that leads to a level of buy-in that seems to translate to results on the field. And I get the sense, I don't listen to every Texas State presser. I know at UTSA they talk about culture incessantly, and I'm sure especially when he was setting the foundation at Texas State, Kenny talked about a lot of that stuff. But it's still funny. I'll listen to his pressers, and there's still, I wish I could remember one off the top of my head, but there's still one or two things that he says. And it's like, oh yeah, I've heard Jeff say that a few times. Like, obviously he's rubbed off on him. And even to know that, I thought it was really enlightening last year, because you think about, Jeff is probably putting in a good word for him at all these different jobs, and he's helping him along any way he can. And then you see him go to a rival, and you wonder how that relationship's going to change. And then one thing Jeff said that I thought was really enlightening, it should have been common sense, but it was enlightening to hear it from him, is, we're still going to be family long after we're both done with football. So that's always going to come first and always going to take priority. So it seems that Jeff said today they haven't talked this week yet. So maybe there's still a little bit more tension now. I think this game has a lot more on the line than some of the previous Texas State and UTSA matchups that we've seen. But it's cool to know that they still have that bond, that really no matter what happens, you're going to see them hug it out at the end of the game, and they're going to have something good going after that.
Yeah, because it's adds such a unique perspective to this whole rivalry is those two, because it's more so than Texas State versus UTSA. It's personal for not on like a bad, like, oh, it's personal, but it's like a
Right.
personal relationship with those two being former head coach and player in high school and doing great things at Gilmer, and now going against each other here. It's got to be such a mix of emotions going into it. You want to beat them, even though you want them to succeed when they're not facing you. And it's such an interesting piece to this whole thing. It's not like this rivalry needed anything else, but just to
Right.
add that to it, it makes it that much more fun for this game. What I wonder going into it is this potentially the last version of it. If one or both of these coaches is successful, what happens after this season? Who's going to come knocking at their door? So for me personally, I'm going to enjoy this game just for to having that in mind. Because even last year, I was like, what were the odds? What were the odds these two when back in Gilmer would they ever think that this is where they would be 20 years later? And now we're getting it again, and we may not get it another time after that. So I'm definitely going to appreciate it. I'm very excited. I think this has the chance to be the best game in this series. I mean,
Yeah,
it's hard to beat that 2021, but I feel like it's going to be that.
that's an interesting note, because for Kinney this year, it's the first time he's been in the same coaching job 2 years in a row, which is just an interesting commentary on how quickly these things change. And I think for both of them, every year with Traylor, the rumor mill starts up, and I don't expect that this year will be any different. And with each passing change in college athletics, as quickly as everything goes, and now with the revenue sharing deal, it's just harder and harder for smaller schools to keep up. So I think the bigger jobs just look more and more appealing every year. So yeah, it's a great point. I think we should all savor this matchup while we have it, because this is both programs kind of at their peak. I think you could argue that both of these teams are the best teams that the schools have ever fielded. And I think obviously this year will have to play out before you can say that with any certainty. But there's a lot of optimism, and especially with the stakes of that college football playoff spot for the top G5 team, and both schools have admitted that they feel like they're in the mix for that. So yeah, enjoy this matchup. This is going to be a good one.
It is. It is. I think it's gonna be great no matter how it turns out. Maybe another overtime game like we had in 2020. We'll have to stay in that press box a little longer on Saturday, but it'd be worth it
You,
definitely.
I still think about that game, because
Me too.
Trailer, he's so big into culture and all that stuff. Like, if the Texas State kicker could make the extra point and they lose that first game, like, how does the momentum and his whole tenure potentially play out differently? I think we've learned he's a good enough coach that they still would have got there, but I think it is just a different kind of feeling and narrative around the team if they don't win that game. And I wonder how it would have snowballed for that year and going forward. So I don't know. I
Mm.
think about that one all the time. That's like a turning point. And
Yeah.
even in
Big sliding doors moment, and there's some controversy with that kick if you look at it. I guess maybe I've seen Ace Ventura too many times, but the laces are in when they kick it. So there might be something with the holder if you look at one. Alan Arona, that poor guy. It's a disappointment on that one. He definitely heard it from Texas State fans, but yeah, that was a crazy game. That was a crazy year for Texas State. They were one of four teams in the nation that played all 12 games. It was that 2020
Oh
year
yeah,
where
sure.
things were crazy, and they only ended up winning two of them. So it was like maybe a few of those could have gotten canceled, but didn't Didn't happen. That was
Right.
a wild year. That was one where it felt like they had it. There were a few other games that year where it felt like they had it, and it just fell off. But interesting sliding doors moment to think about what Trailer's trajectory would have been then.
And even
Uh,
yeah, for Texas State side too, I mean, these things are always just one or two plays away from a season being different. As much as
mhm.
people speak very definitively about all the things that happen, a lot of stuff could change, and who knows how that tenure could have played out under different circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's all it's crazy what a few wins can do, what a few seconds in a game can do if you don't finish it right and get that win. It's the difference between bowl eligibility and a whole bunch
Right.
of other stuff. But this year for UTSA, we saw the Kennesaw State game. They got out to a lead. It was like 21-3. Then Kennesaw State kind of got back into it. But UTSA was able to finish them off. But what went into that game? Because it was similar to Texas State. They kind of
Right.
did the same thing. Almost seemed like both teams were playing with their food a little bit. Maybe they were looking ahead to this game. But what was your take on UTSA and their performance against the Owls?
Yeah, it's so funny because I think at about 6:30 on Saturday, UTSA fans were really panicked because they felt like their team should have shown better against Kennesaw. And then they saw Texas State come out and do the exact same thing, and their fans are probably feeling the same way. So both teams hot starts, and then it kind of fizzled. I think, and you could both penalties were a huge factor too. That's something that's been talked about a lot on both sides. So yeah, I think it was really, really promising out of the gate for the Roadrunners. Owen McCown takes over at quarterback, which as much as they tried to play up a quarterback competition, it always seemed like it was going to be Owen McCown just based on what we saw last year and everything we've heard since then. And so he comes out and he leads three straight touchdown drives and looks incredible. He was something like 18 for 20 and was getting close to 300 yards already in the first half. And then it's hard to say exactly where things went wrong. There were some protections they didn't pick up. You can point to the running backs, you can point to the offensive line, but the protection sort of fizzled. And then I think that led to some rush decision making from Owen. And long story short, in the second half, they started with four straight 3-and-outs. And even at the end of the first half, they ended with a fumble and a missed field goal. And then I think there was another penalty situation that led to a punt. So it just became a real grind to get through the game. The defense played essentially really well from start to finish. They had one or two breakdowns, which is going to happen against the triple option attack, no matter who's running it. It's just hard to keep track of all the different moving parts and not have one guy slip through, especially when they start mixing in. Like their one scoring play was a play action pass to a tight end down the seam, and just somebody didn't pick up their guy, and that's 6 points. So for the most part, the defense was really sound. It was just that the offense could not sustain the level they started at. And I part of me wonders if some of that is just human nature. Like when it's just so easy for three straight drives, and Texas State probably the same way. Like, do you just kind of let up, or do you sort of take things for granted, and then it's hard to flip that switch again? So I am probably not as panicked about either team as a lot of people are, just because I tend to believe in what they showed at the beginning of the game. I'd be more concerned if it started the other way, like if they were bad out of the gate and then they had to turn it on later. You know what I mean? But I think we're probably going to see the first quarter form of both teams more likely than not when they get together.
Yeah, and that's there was so much of that last week, and Kenny kind of brought it up at the press conference about how you look at like Texas Tech, they had a close call. There were so many close calls, so many games where teams laxed up on these lesser opponents, and it was almost like something in the air that this first week where nobody was sound. Maybe so much time off, a little bit of sloppy for everybody, but that was the interesting thing. I don't know if you saw with Texas State where they put in their backup
Yeah.
in the first quarter. They went up 15-0, and then RJ Martinez came out and then he was playing. It almost felt like it didn't want to show a ton of tape for UTSA or didn't want to put too much on the table. Do you think that UTSA was doing any of that at all too? Maybe they got a little conservative and that's why it wasn't propelling like it was in the first quarter.
Yeah, so certainly defensively that wouldn't be a factor because the offenses are so different. There's nothing that they would run against Kennesaw that would carry over. But on the offensive side, there's an argument to be made for that, but I sort of think that with how long they've been here and how much they're sort of committed to their system, they've probably put most of their stuff on tape at one time or another. I'm sure Texas State did the offseason film study and gathered a lot of stuff from last year, and I'm sure it's a lot of those same things. So, I mean, they're not going to bust out their surprise onside kick or their halfback pass or anything like that. But I think generally, probably you get a sense of what UTSA runs just from knowing them. If Texas State's offense is super different under a different quarterback, there's a chance that they held some things in reserve. But I don't know. I think there's also a sense of maybe just a little bit of sloppy play, getting to know for UTSA, it's three new starters on the offensive line. And I think just kind of getting that group to gel in live action. And, there was a running back a fumble, and it made me think they don't tackle to the ground in practice for UTSA ever. So maybe just there's some adjustment to the physicality that you see once the lights are on and the games count for real. And so I think there could be some of that leads to some early just sort of adjustment period. But it's funny because in the past, Coach Traylor has said that basically they treat the non-conference season like he treated non-district in high school. Like it's about getting ready for the games that count. And now this year, it was supposed to be a total change of tone where they wanted to be really sharp in these games and adjust training camp to sort of peak at a different time in the schedule because they need to put a resume together if they want to fight for that college football playoff spot. So just from that sense, it was a little alarming because we were used to some of this sort of figuring it out on the field in the past, but this year it was supposed to be different.
Hmm. They're trying to put up a better resume and put up those points on a Kennesaw State opponent. That's something that's interesting. I hadn't even considered that. If you're that G5 and you're fighting for that 12 spot, assuming that's how I think that's how it's going to work out, is the 12 spot's going to a G5 champ. Then you need to put up a little bit more of a display out there. Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know if they really wanted to try to run up the score on anybody, but just to know that, like, how often are you in a situation like this where it's week two and it's like, wow, this is a big game? Like, it feels like there's a lot on the line for both schools. And usually at this time of year, if you lose this game, it's not sort of make or breaking your season the way it feels like it is this time around.
Yeah, yeah. Owen McCown, you said they tried to put up a front like there was an actual quarterback competition, but it was going to be McCown the whole way. He looked pretty sharp. I didn't get to watch the whole game. I got to watch some of that first half, the first of you were talking about, where he was playing really well, and he looked sharp. I mean, Frank Harris is gone, but they seem that UTSA has been able to find a pretty solid replacement. Tell me about him. Tell me about Owen McCown and what he's about.
Yeah, I just wrote today. It's probably some things you would expect from the son of a journeyman quarterback and a quarterback family, but the cerebral part of it is really on point for him. He compared to when Frank comes in or when we saw a lot of new guys at quarterback sort of getting their opportunity, Owen is already making a lot of the checks and adjustments at the line and kind of audibling them into different things. And um, Coach Traylor said he was really good on the read option plays in the first half, and then in the second, maybe made the wrong choice once or twice, but generally is so far ahead of the curve on that stuff compared to somebody with his experience level in the system. So you see from the mental side that he's putting himself in an advantageous situation. And I think he's going to surprise you guys if you're not ready for it, in the sense that he is more athletic than he looks. I mean, he's very good with his feet and will make some plays on the ground. He ran for a touchdown in this game, and it's not like he's gonna pull it and run for 100 yards more often than not. But if you give it to him, if they're just like not gonna respect that he has the ability to do that, he could put up a pretty big game on the ground too. So I think he has a stronger arm than Frank Harris. Obviously, what made Frank Harris special was so much of the intangibles, and I think you guys probably saw facing him at different points in his career, just some of the different things he did that contributed to winning. But Owen is more, I guess, technical, maybe more of a pro style passer. And just can make a lot of those throws on a timing basis and can zip it to different parts of the field. Now, they didn't get the downfield passing game going as much in this one. And that's something they've made a point of emphasis. So we'll see if they're able to unleash that in a different way. But he seems very comfortable just kind of moving through his reads and taking whatever is open. And a lot of times in this game, that turned out to be something short. But we'll see if they sort of have to branch out or try something different against Texas State. But yeah, he looked really, really sharp in this game, and it wasn't much of a surprise. I know we saw last year he played spot duty. He came in against Tennessee and was great in the second half, albeit in a blowout where they might not have been getting Tennessee's best effort. And then he led them to a win in the bowl game. So he's got a little bit of experience here and has looked good in everything we've seen in some of the opportunities last year. He might have taken some risks, made a mistake or two, and he just didn't do that against Kennesaw. So remains to be seen if it's the quality of the opponent or if he's just kind of tightened up some things here and there. But he's more confident than they would have expected or hoped at this point. I think he's been a real promising, probably the most promising thing to come out of the opening game.
Mm. Yeah, that was a great performance. When I was seeing from him, I didn't see much of a drop off from Frank Harris to him. I mean, obviously that's I'm not trying to say he's Frank
No,
Harris
right.
already, but I was just like, wow, this offense is still moving pretty well, even with the new signal caller. He looked pretty good back there. So you mentioned the offensive line issues, some potential questions there with the Roadrunners, and we saw last season in this matchup where Frank Harris was knocked out of the game twice. Came back in a third time though, like Terminator, just kept coming back in. With the Bobcats defensive line, they get a lot of pressure. We saw this last week. It's the same style of defense that they were playing as last season when they got all that pressure. Is that something that you think could be another issue in this game with this defensive line going up against this offensive line that still has some newness and is figuring some things out?
Yeah, so to go into the personnel a little bit more, they have a new center, CJ James, who transferred in from New Mexico, and he's got a ton of experience under his belt. So it was sort of expected that in terms of the line calls and things like that, he would be a smooth addition and that they would be able to be sharp there right out of the gate. But maybe it's just meshing with the new system and new guys, but they turned a couple linebackers loose last week. And so those guys had free shots. I mean, Kennesaw State ended up with 5 sacks, which is way more than you would expect in a matchup like that. And some of it is just guys getting beat one-on-one. They have a new left tackle, Kamar Missouri. He's a transfer from Rutgers, and he had his moments where he didn't look great. And they had their right tackle is a transfer from Houston, Jalen Garth, who started at Texas, like started his career at Texas. He never started a game at Texas because he hasn't really played much since high school. He's been injured in a lot of different things where he's been pushed down the depth chart at all of his different stops, and now he's in this starting opportunity towards the end of his college career. So there are maybe some personnel wise, some matchups that Texas State will think they can take advantage of. I imagine with Ben Bell on the line, it's pretty often you have personnel matchups you think you can take advantage of. So um, certainly that's going to be something that they're going to have to keep an eye on. But there's a chance that it's much better than it was last week just because it seems like most of the issues are communication. Like they mentioned that even just running backs, getting those guys picked up, those linebackers that came free, it's easy to point to somebody on the offensive line, but it sounds like from the way they've described it, looking back, that it was the running back responsibility. So they can just tighten up some of those things. Maybe it won't be as bad as UTSA saw in week 1, but by the same token, the competition is going to be a lot tougher.
Yeah, yeah. With a lot of newness, you can imagine there are some communication issues right off the bat. So could see them cleaning that up a little bit. Last year, incredible crowd too. The Alamo Dome. I can't remember the exact number. It was like 56,000, something like that.
I think it was,
That
I want to say 49 because 56 is
oh,
the record
49.
inaugural game. And I think this was like second, something like that.
Gotcha. Maybe that's where I was getting that mixed up. That's the record for the game was 56 because I knew it wasn't that, but
It was impressive. Yeah.
yeah, it's an incredible crowd. I anticipate there's going to be another big crowd for this one too. A big rowdy crowd. Is that those communication issues? Obviously, you got to talk to Jeff Traylor. Was that anything? Did he get to talk about the helmet communication? Does that help out at all? Was that added a little extra advantage for them in their first game?
I had it on my list of questions to ask today, and I ended up punting it till tomorrow, just on time. We had some guys waiting to talk to us after him, but in the preseason, they talked about it a lot, and it was sort of the thought process was they can't really change much about how they do things because they just want to operate at a certain tempo. And I wonder how Kinney's talked about that because obviously they go even faster, but generally, if you're going to call in the signal to the quarterback and then he's going to relay it, it just takes longer than if you signal it in from the sideline. So they were kind of operating the same way that they always have, but with that extra layer of security and maybe the ability to pass along one or two nuggets or notes or observations from the coordinator to the quarterback directly with that communication time. So I don't think that it's changed too much about the way that they operate overall.
I feel like we're going to see less of the funny signs they all hold up from the sideline.
That
Now
would
they
be
can just communicate.
He's always said that the best way to get rid of that, they would have to have wristbands essentially, where, or just have communication to more guys, where essentially you could call it in to a bunch of different people or have it be relayed faster without having to send it to the quarterback and then the quarterback sends it around, which just slows them down. Because it's really good for teams that want to huddle because that is exceptionally easy to just call it into the quarterback and have them tell the guys in the huddle. But for the tempo teams, it just adds an extra step that might slow them down a bit.
Right. Yeah, they may just even abandon it altogether because it does make sense where like, he'd have to go around all the other 10 guys and make sure they're
Right.
hearing what he's hearing in his helmet.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know the iPads, that was interesting to see that on the sideline. It just makes the sideline look a lot different. At least it did this very first game because everyone's huddled. They all have one iPad per unit, and they're all just huddled around an iPad, and the coach is pointing to it. It's a little different for the game, getting a little more technological out there.
That one I think probably just streamlines things. I forget who told me this, but it's like you tell a player, hey, you missed this block here. And he's like, oh, no, I didn't. The guy wasn't there. And then now you can just say, look, this is you missing this block, like right now. You know what I mean? I think you probably cut out some of the middle part of that adjustment process when you can just show them what's going wrong directly.
No arguments. You missed the block. There you are on this iPad missing the block. I feel like
Yeah.
that was my mom when I was playing like Pop Warner football. I'd come home. She'd pull in the VCR or plug in the camcorder and it would pull up. She'd be zoomed in on me the whole time, like, see, there you are, not running after the guy with the ball.
Guess been
Oh,
doing film breakdown since birth. There you have
yeah.
it.
Yeah, there you go. Film analysis. That's a Texas mother for you. Just instilling it in you. Well, hey man, this has been fantastic. I can't wait to see you on Saturday. Can't wait to see you in San Marcos. You got anything cool you want to plug? You got anything in the pipeline coming up? I know you got some Texas State pieces going on for this week.
Yeah, this week I'm trying to find stuff that covers, both teams. There's such an interesting connection and parallel between the way that both of them started the season and now both in a high stakes matchup here. So yeah, trying to get something that'll appeal to both audiences. And you can always find my stuff on Express News. You can find me on Twitter. But I really want to take a second to just give you a shout out because for people who haven't done it before, they have no idea how hard it is to solo podcast. Like you think it's easy to just talk, but I've tried to do it once or twice when I had co-hosts at a previous job that couldn't make it. And it is hard. Like it's very easy to lose your way or to not keep the flow. So it's impressive the length and quality of a show you're able to put out. And I don't think people realize that.
You know, peppering in some really good guests helps, like I'm doing right now. But lots of prep, lots of prep.
Yeah,
That's the
right.
key to it. That's what I tell people with the solo pod. But I also just, I don't shut up. So that's probably my biggest issue. But thank you. I appreciate that. And you know what? Man, everything that you do, we're covering at UTSA and Incarnate Word, you've been doing it for a long time. You've been doing it with such care, but also with a lot of journalistic integrity for both beats. And you've they're not the two biggest beats in the country, but you treat them with a ton of respect. So real honored to have you on the show and to have you talking about this game coming up on Saturday.
You're far too kind, but I appreciate it. I'll come back anytime now.
Awesome. Greg Luca, everyone, subscribe to the Express News, SA Express News. More than just UTSA, right?
Plenty of stuff on there. Anything you want to know about the city, and they've been getting more and more up into the hill country as time goes on, and their San Marcos is, keeping an eye out over there too. So there's something for everybody at the Express News.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Greg.